As you know, we have a unique messaging philosophy that has helped entrepreneurs around the world scale their businesses. But one of the biggest questions I get asked is, will it work for me? Well, today we talk to one entrepreneur who nearly 4x her revenue in just 4 months simply by following our process. So if you're curious to hear about what she did and how she incorporated it into her Evergreen funnel, well, keep on listening because that's exactly what we talk about on this episode. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we have an amazing interview lined up for you. In fact, we have a Video 4x student who's had amazing success inside the program. And what I want to do is walk you through exactly what she did and talk a little bit about our business because it kind of goes against the way I run my business. So we have a very good episode lined up for you. And today we have Rose Radford on the podcast, who is a business strategist and coach. So Rose, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I guess to get started, let's just give everyone a little context of who you are, what you do, and then I want to get into your story. And I'm really excited to see how our strategies of running a business can collide or work together. So just so everyone knows, what is it that you do and how do you help people?
Awesome. Yeah. So I help female coaches scale with a high ticket group coaching program that they sell on Evergreen. So I help them stop riding that launch roller coaster, and instead scale gently by signing 1, 2, maybe 3 new clients a week into a high ticket group coaching program.
Okay, cool. We might have some newbies here, like new entrepreneurs. Can you describe, number one, what does Evergreen actually mean? And then number two, what is the launch roller coaster?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So Evergreen is kind of the opposite of launching, in that Evergreen means that you are always on, always open. You're able to take on new clients every day, and you're not opening and closing offers. Whereas when you're launching, you're opening something, you're opening a course, a group coaching program, and then you're closing it again. So they're really kind of opposites in terms of marketing methods. And the launch roller coaster is created when you're launching every couple of months and you're doing big pushes on marketing, and then you're relaxing for a couple of months, and then you push again. And the reason I call it a launch roller coaster is because it creates up and down spikes in your revenue and your cash. And for some people, that can be a bit stressful.
Yeah. And I think also one of the things you mentioned before the podcast was that a lot of your audience are moms, and sometimes moms can't take a month to put a huge effort into a big launch, because launches they take effort, a couple times a year, which could be a good or a bad thing. But for your audience, it seems to work really well. Let's move to the focus of your business, of where you were before you kind of entered into, I guess, my world or the Video 4x world. What did your business look like then? Revenue wise, audience size, like all that stuff. What were you like kind of facing at that point, which I think was March of 2021?
Yeah, this year. Yeah. So before entering the Video 4x effect, I was doing pretty consistent 20K months. That's in pounds, which is just under $30,000 a month. But I was really kind of coasting, plateauing. I'd done a few launches. I'd ridden the launch roller coaster myself. I'd also done a bit of Evergreen, and I was really feeling as though I was just blending in with everybody else. And I don't like blending in. Haven't blended in before in my life. Wasn't about to do it now.
Well, can I ask why? Because it sounds like you had some traction, like you're able to go to $20,000 months. Were you not blending in, and then all of a sudden more competitors came in, then you blended in? Like where did the blending in happen? Like how did that happen? Why did it happen?
Yeah, I felt as though the value that I was able to give and provide in the market and to clients, I couldn't seem to articulate it enough. And I was feeling as though I was saying the same thing as everybody else. Yeah. And just being able to stand out was really hard. And I knew it was a messaging problem. And I'd gone around in circles with my messaging for 3 years at that point.
Yeah.
And I kind of had enough of it, really. Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So you're blending in, you're kind of plateaued with revenue. What happened from there?
So I joined the Video 4x effect and I smashed through the content. I think I basically binged watched you for about 2 weeks solid, because there's a lot in there.
Sorry, I know that's not the most enjoyable thing to listen to me talk all the time, but it sounds like it was helpful.
You were on 1.75x or whatever it is. So you were talking very quickly as well. But
yeah.
I basically went through it knowing I was probably going to go through this 4 times. I think I've been through it 2 or 3 times now in terms of the entire course.
Yeah.
And I implemented as quickly as possible.
Love it.
Which was really, really great. And what was super cool to see there is I hadn't actually got the renewed version of my accelerator, my high ticket group coaching program. I hadn't got that ready just yet, but I was implementing what you were teaching me back in March, and then had inquiries come into my DMs every day asking to join my program. I was like, crap, I haven't got it ready yet.
Yeah.
So that was a great problem to have at that point.
Right.
Yeah, so that was awesome. And then since then, revenue has climbed month on month, and that's been really amazing to just witness. So I know I shared the numbers with you, but we did 34K. This is all in pounds, by the way, on a monthly basis. So 34K, then 43,000, then 66,000, and we're currently on 78,000 this month so far.
That's incredible. That's like a 4x in the next 4 months, or since joining the program. There's something that you said though, and this is something that I tell the students, or I tell our audience all the time, is like, content needs to create demand. This is not about like talking about your offers, talking about your programs, talking about the modules. It's talking about like your unique solution, what makes you unique, and creating demand for that methodology or that IP, intellectual property. And when you can communicate it the right way, people want it. And people like describing the program or describing the modules shouldn't be the selling points. People should know they want to work with you before they know anything's for sale. And that DM thing that you're experiencing is what I tell people is like, we get people in our DMs wanting what we sell when they don't even know what it is. So what do you think it was that caused people to like start DMing you? Like can you give me some examples of how you shifted your communication that led to that?
Yeah. So one of the big things was having the struggling avatar very clear, and then the future-paced hero, as you describe it. And my struggling avatar is the roller coaster coach. And just describing that in bullet point format on an infographic on Instagram is game changing, because people automatically start identifying themselves as the struggling avatar. And then I was describing, what is the future-paced hero experience? And for me, that's the CEO coach. Yeah. And just being able to contrast those two people gives your audience a huge aha moment. And that was really amazing to give people. And just repeating myself again and again. I've had at least 3 friends recently say to me, Rose, you just keep saying the same thing again and again on Instagram, don't you? It must be working. I'm like, it's working.
It's called consistent messaging, people.
Yeah.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. And that's the other thing too that we talk about, is when you can describe someone so specifically that what will happen, and especially their problems, is they will automatically go, like the subconscious will kick in. The subconscious goes, oh my God, they're talking about me. Like they don't even have to think about it. They just go, oh my gosh. And then the second thing that comes up is that they know that you have the solution. So then when you describe, here's where you want to be, or here's where you can be, they automatically assume subconsciously, boom, you have the solution. And then when we position our unique solution, it just creates demand. So tell me a little bit about your unique solution. What did you come up with?
Yeah, it's the LEAP method.
Okay.
And I came up with it sitting on the kitchen floor, just like
Love it.
with a piece of paper and a pen, driving myself slightly insane with acronyms and trying to figure out what can we do here. And so the LEAP method stands for leverage, evergreen, audience, and profit.
Okay.
And that really is built to, and it's what I teach inside my Freedom Accelerator, to help my clients launch that high ticket group coaching program and scale it as far as they want to go.
Got it. Okay, cool. Okay, so I want to hear a little bit more of the story. So you joined the program, you started going through it. You said something really important, is you went through it 3 or 4 times, or 2 or 3 times. And I think that's really important for people to understand, is because the number one question we get asked is like, well, how long do I have to go through the program? It's like, or how long do I have access? And it's like, for life, because this isn't a program. This is a philosophy that you're going to have to go through each several times, and maybe once a year, because every time you do, you have new levels of awareness, new information, new data, which is going to give you more tools. So when you go through it again, your messaging gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So after your first month, you implement it the first time, you're doing $20,000 months. What started to happen from that stage? Like as far as content, engagement, audience, and sales? Like I know you gave us your numbers, but describe in a little bit more details of the journey after that first month.
Yeah. So I started getting between 3 and 8 new inquiries into my DMs every single day.
Every day?
Yeah.
Wow,
Now that
crazy.
is not just the messaging piece, but it's also the systems I've now got set up that I teach my clients on in terms of Evergreen systems, making sure you've got inquiries coming in.
Okay.
But I'm getting the right people into the DMs in the first place, which is kind of game changing.
Yep.
So that's been great. Lots of inquiries coming in. And lead generation was no longer the bottleneck. It then became sales and sales calls and making sales that became the bottleneck. So there's been a really fun game of like solve the next bottleneck for me recently. And I would say my audience growth hasn't been huge. I've just monetized my audience more effectively. I think we've grown by like 300 followers, and that's it on Instagram.
Yeah. I can't stress this enough. And we actually have an ad out right now that says like your followers don't equal sales. And people want to argue against that. And it's like, look, it doesn't matter if you have 500 followers or 5,000. If you can't monetize or close them, it does you absolutely no good. But if we focus on how do we get the conversion rate higher through communication, that's all that matters. And I love that you've like basically 4x revenue without really 4xing or even 1xing or even a half a xing your follower count, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely mad. We also hired a video editor over in the Philippines. I literally just followed step by step what you shared with me. It worked. Got somebody amazing on the team. We pumped out some really high production video as well, which has been really fun.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. So when you had a comment in there where you said you started getting the right people, what specifically do you think led to you getting the right people in from the beginning?
I would say, well, what's really interesting is I went and took the messaging framework and everything that you shared inside the program and laced that through my entire Evergreen funnel that I already had in place, but I just upgraded it with all that messaging pieces. And so now I've had probably 3 or 4 discovery calls with new clients, and they've pretty much recited that webinar back to me using words as roller coaster coach. And I'm like, this is hilarious. They're giving my messaging back to me on this call. So getting the people that really identify with the messaging has been really awesome. And they're at a very specific stage of business. We know that they're the right type of person because they've gone through that funnel, they've resonated along the way. And it's really nice to see who pops out on the other end of the funnel now.
Right. So what I hear you saying is like, you just basically with the messaging, we're able to go to a deeper level in communication to the right person. And that's one of the things we always tell people is that lean into the values, lean into the beliefs, lean into exactly who you want. Don't get wishy-washy with it. And then you will attract exactly that person. I mean, it's very simple, but a lot of people don't do that. And and when you get that, like people repeating things back to you, that's like the first sign that your messaging's like killing it and crushing it. Okay, great. So with that being said, you're heading into a $78,000 a month. What does that feel like? Like, how do you feel now compared to where you did back then?
It's so fun. It's really joyful and really easy. And you cut me short there because you said $78,000. Actually, it's 78,000 pounds. So it's $105,000. And I'm like, hang on, if we continue doing this, we're then like really tracking at 7 figures at that point.
Yeah.
And so, that's just really cool to see. So it feels really good. It feels really joyful. And I really enjoy this phase of a business where you kind of get to scale rather than like the starting bit or the growing bit. It's now, okay, cool. Let's just keep doing what we're doing and make it better and better and better all the time. Yeah.
I have actually an actual business logistics question for you, which is like, obviously with revenue growth, one of the things I talk about is as your revenue grows, it creates more problems, or not even problems, just like hats to wear inside the business, which means team will start to grow. What did your team look like before versus now? Like when you're doing 20K months versus now, or 20,000 pound months to 78,000 pound months, what does the team look like during that transformation for you?
We've only actually added 1 person in, and that's, well, actually maybe it's 2, the video editor
Yeah.
And then somebody on my sales calls now as well, my discovery calls, because I can only do so many in a week.
Right. Okay.
That was the bottleneck. That was the next bottleneck. So we had the lead generation, great. Sales became the issue.
Okay.
So there's like 5, maybe 6 of us at this point. And I probably will add one more person on at the end of the year.
Okay.
But it won't be crazy.
Yeah. So you just added a couple people on there. Why do you think that is? Because like in a quote unquote normal business, coffee shop or like a local business, when you have such an increase in revenue, there's way more, I guess, overhead or employees you need. How did you set up the business? Is it like the structure of the offers, the price point? What was it exactly that led to big increases in revenue, but not so much in, I guess, overhead?
Yeah, this was very purposefully designed from the get-go because of the way I've crafted my offers. So I have 2 group coaching programs, and I designed them with the intention of having 100 in one of them and probably about 50 or 60 in the other. Okay. And so I had the co-coaches on board. I had the systems in place already for accountability. And I was really intentional. I started there before I even got into the lead generation and the sales aspect, because that's why I upgraded my offer in March. I was like, hang on, I'm not actually designing here from a place of, can we receive that amount of capacity in terms of clients and support people really well from the beginning. And otherwise you just bottleneck yourself from an offer perspective.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that is one thing we talked about in the program is a lot of people actually have business models or offers that are set up to never reach their goals. Like when you break down how many hours you require to you need to fulfill on the amount of money you want to make, it doesn't add up. You need to work like 30 hours a day to fulfill on that. But it sounds like you're really smart in kind of just creating the offer, the fulfillment, the structure around how they're going to scale in a way that doesn't require really a lot more time, which is huge because with messaging, you're going to, like, if you can crush it, nail it, you're going to see increase in sales. So you're really smart in how you did that. And I'm assuming this is all Evergreen. You did everything Evergreen since that's what you teach.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had 18 clients sign up. I checked on Friday, which was the 14th day of the month. Yeah. Had 18 clients sign up already that month, this month so far. Wow. And being able to receive that volume of clients in a little, what feels still a bit like my tiny business is really exciting to see.
Well, the business isn't so tiny anymore.
No, apparently not.
Which is awesome. Let's walk through your process a little bit. How does it work, evergreening a high ticket program?
Yeah, sure. So obviously crafting it is the first place, getting really clear about that program promise. Yep. And then I like to call, instead of launching it, we live funnel test it.
Okay.
That's what I did. That's what I get my clients to do inside my accelerator. And that really involves you building the assets then that you'll then turn evergreen. So the assets being a couple of landing pages, a webinar, a few emails, those sorts of pieces, right? Yep. And instead of just using it as a one-hit wonder for a launch, we then take those assets, prove them on that live funnel test, and then run them evergreen. So running ads to them, sending organic traffic to them on a daily basis. So let's say you launch this month and you sign 5 people into your group coaching program because you've got an audience just getting started. Yep. You can then sign another for the next month, and another for the next month, and just start tracking it 1 a week. It's a really nice, gentle place to be in as you begin to grow. It's a very quick way to get to a 20K month, which is exactly what I was doing previously.
Okay. When you say live funnel test, does that mean just designing a funnel and then running traffic to it? Is that what that means?
So it usually involves doing the masterclass live. As a starting point. And then if it goes really well, either take the recording of it, or some people just like to re-record it anyway for perfectionist's sake. Got it. And then, turn it evergreen from there. Okay.
And again, I'm asking all these questions for my own, I just want to know. So being selfish here, but when you go and you do a live webinar, like how much traffic or registrants do you need to get onto the webinar to like actually get some data of whether or not it's working? Number one. Yeah, actually, let's just start there. So how many people do you need to register for the webinar to get like a full good test in?
Yeah, I like to have at least 100 people live, like on there attending, because then you can begin to get a bit of a conversion rate from there. Often we'll have clients do a second webinar because they want to test a different title or test something slightly different in the webinar storyline and just see what impact that has on conversion rate. Okay. So then we're looking at like 100 people showing up or at least watching it. Usually it's like 50% show up rate, right? But I'm like, just get 300 registrants, then you're definitely safe. Okay. And then, yeah, we kind of aim for at least 100 people showing up live or at least watching the replay.
That's interesting because for us and a lot of stuff that we run and a lot of our students, like the show up rate's usually closer to 25%. What are you guys doing to get a 50% show up rate?
So retargeting with an ad, it's a super cheap ad typically, where it's like, hey, you're signed up to the masterclass. Here's a link to add it straight into your calendar. And it's an ad event link that you can, I think it's free or very, very cheap to use ad event. And then you can actually click on it and then get somebody to add the event into their calendar. So they're more likely to then show up in that sense.
Okay.
Obviously having the email sequence there as well. And then we put the replay out afterwards by a certain deadline. And then we also do Instagram DMs follow-up or Facebook message follow-up.
Oh, interesting. And that's all automated?
Not automated, no. So
okay.
Usually we have a VA do it, or if you haven't got a VA, do it yourself, but it's not too impossible if you've got a few hundred people to go follow up with.
Interesting. So when people register, you guys are manually DMing them to show up to the webinar?
No, only afterwards.
Oh,
so yeah, only afterwards. You kind of want to look at like, okay, who's attended, who hasn't. You can usually get that data from Zoom. And it's just an opportunity to go and have conversations with the people that signed up, whether they attended or not, to understand the objections, what's going on for them right now, and really having a finger on the pulse with your audience, which I think a lot of people remove themselves from because automation is a sexy thing to do, right? And just throw a sales page up there and hopefully somebody will buy. And actually, it's probably worth me noting, we've done nearly 150, maybe 200K into this offer recently since March. I haven't had a sales page. There's been no sales page at all.
That's so interesting.
I do all the things like opposite or backwards to what's usually taught.
Well, that's what
is really fun.
And that's what I love and I tell people all the time, like they're so focused on their sales page. I'm like, your sales page is just a place for them to check out. Like the selling happens before the sales page. Like you shouldn't even call it sales page. It should just really be a checkout page or an information page of like what's included in the program, because if your messaging's dialed in, people should want it before that. And I love that you don't even have a sales page, because that's the proof right there. Like you don't need a sales page. Getting people to DM you and say, how do I work with you? It doesn't require a sales page, which is unbelievable. So one of the things that we talk about, or one of the things that I look at when I look at Evergreen, I think automation, whatever. And one of the things with launches, what I always say I love launches, is because you can build up so much momentum. So your conversion rates can be higher. You can do things live that you can't do Evergreen. But I absolutely love that you guys incorporate some of that like liveness. I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean, right? Like or intimacy may be the right word, or something like that.
I call it personalization, but intimacy is another really good word actually, because you need to have your finger on the pulse with your audience. I really believe that. And we have a lot of conversations that happen on Instagram for me. That's my main platform. Yeah. And I get to understand and know what's happening for my audience 24/7. It's so helpful for my content creation and emails and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I like specifically because we are also selling something that's high ticket. Yeah. I think people kind of want to interact with you a little bit first as well.
Right. So how does it work with low ticket? Does your process still work with low ticket?
We do nearly all of our sales for low ticket in the DMs.
Okay. How does that work?
So we have the low ticket offer is $1,500 right now. It's just gone up. But we do that through a script that I use and a VSL, so video sales letter. Which is just a video of me walking through, not really a sales page. It's a Google Doc, actually. Yeah. There we go. Very basic. Yeah. It's a Google Doc sales page. And invites people to basically say, yeah, I'm in, I'm ready to go. And then we ping them the payment link and they sign up.
Okay. So if I understand this correctly, your Evergreen process for low ticket is basically waiting for people to DM you, send them a Google Doc, and then they buy?
Yeah, but we also invite them into my DMs too.
Okay, so you like post a piece of content and you'll say if this is interesting or whatever, it's go into our DM us, whatever, and then you have a manual process that is it's a Google Doc with a VSL.
Yes.
I love that so much. I mean, like you're the epitome of great messaging, because like you're just like, oh yeah, I sent a Google Doc, and you're laughing because you know it's so simple and not this like big, huge professional thing. Because that's what great messaging can do. Great communication, when you're properly communicating, getting people, like what I say is you speak to their subconscious. You don't require them to think, they just know and feel. And that's exactly what you're doing. Yeah. So my next question is about messaging, but more geared towards webinars, because that's a question we get asked all the time. Since going through the program, has your webinars, have they changed at all? Like, have you incorporated more messaging into the sales mechanism webinar? And what was that like?
Yeah, big time. I scrapped my old webinar storyline. My old webinar storyline was inspired by things like ClickFunnels stuff and just the stuff that's generally out in the market in general. Right. And took inspiration from obviously the messaging that we've done in the video 4x effect, but also this idea of speaking to people's objections more within the webinar without like hammering that at them. I feel like sometimes people will speak to objections in a webinar and it's really too strong. It's almost like it's too much. And instead was using more of the belief shifting method to speak to the objections. And that feels really nice as a coach, actually.
Yeah, well, it feels natural. It feels, and what you're doing is it's not forceful. It's coming from a place of ending suffering. Like that's what, I'm assuming that's what it is, because that's what we teach and what we preach is like, this isn't about being right. This isn't about being slick or being a salesman. This is literally about identifying, here's a belief you have, but it's actually keeping you stuck or could be the problem. And let's use communication to get you to see that. But can you give me an example? Like what is an example of an objection that you address in your webinar? And like, what's a before and after of that? Like what's a forceful way versus a belief shifting way?
One of the biggest questions and objections I get when I talk about group coaching programs on Evergreen is, well, how can you have people join a group coaching program every week, every day? Like, isn't that going to ruin the vibe of the group? You should be doing group coaching programs in cohorts. Surely everybody needs to start and finish at the same time. I'm like, no, you don't. And the way that I was able to shift that belief is to get people to think about the fact that the human race is full of hares and tortoises. Yeah. And if you've ever been in a group coaching program or been part of a class at school, for goodness sake, we've all been typically part of a class at school, you always know that, let's say by week 3, there's going to be the hares that go really quickly that want to know what's in week 10 already. Right. And they just go 100 miles an hour. Maybe they've arrived at that group coaching program or that class with a few more pieces already in place. They just want to plow ahead. Right. And then you've got the tortoises. They're a bit slower to integrate on things. And they are maybe by week 10, they're still on week 3 because they're still kind of slowly going through it. Right. But what happens is the hares don't get deeply served because you're holding them back, saying that's in week 10, you have to wait. Then you've got the tortoises that feel a bit disengaged by week 10 because they feel so behind, and then they make themselves feel bad. So instead of having the hares and tortoises and trying to push them through a cohort in a group coaching program, why don't we just design for that from the get-go and have our group coaching programs on Evergreen and allow people to join at any time? So I speak to that within the first 10 minutes of the webinar, and it just allows people to be like, oh, of course, now it makes sense.
Right. Okay. I'm just going to kind of break down what you did, because I just want the audience to see, because I love that you gave that example, but obviously what you're doing is you're using a metaphor, which allows, we call it metaphor analogy, so you could use either one, but you're using that so that people don't have to think. They go, oh my God, that makes so much sense. But here's the problem that I see with a lot of people, and let me know if you were doing this, is that what a lot of people will do is they're like, okay, I'm doing a webinar. It's 60 minutes long. I need to fill 60 minutes up. And the only way they know how to do that is by giving more information. However, what you did in the way you described it is you removed an objection, but you also taught them something at the exact same time. So what happens is you actually ate up like 5 minutes of webinar time without giving more and more information. Because if we give more and more information, we risk overwhelming people. And an overwhelmed person thinks, I can't do this. And we need our audience to know I can do this in order to buy. So you just added value, you gave them an aha without giving them step by step more information. And I mean, that's an amazing. And I'm assuming you do that with a few different objections in the webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest ones, the obvious ones, is to talk about, like, do you really have to launch your way to 7 figures? Because there's often like an underlying belief in the online coaching industry that you have to use launches to grow your business. And I went and found loads of coaches that don't use launching and are like multi-7 figure. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to do it the way you're seeing online right now. You can do it a different way. Right. So that's just an example of using, somebody else, kind of a metaphor type thing.
Okay, gotcha. Let's talk about launching versus Evergreen, because we use launches in our business. And I'm actually a believer that you need both inside of a business. You need launches and evergreen. And we're actually working on our own evergreen process, which is why I was selfishly asking you a bunch of questions on it. And I'll probably ask you more after the episode as well. But one of the things I love about launching is that it brings huge amounts of audience growth. So like every time we launch, we incorporate things like podcast episodes, like following us on Instagram, and we see just like big spikes. And I think our podcast has been the biggest one. Like every time we launch, we see just a massive increase in viewership, and then it stays there. Can you still experience that type of stuff with Evergreen, or have you experienced external benefits like follower counts, downloads, stuff like that with an Evergreen model?
Yeah, I mean, my podcast gets more and more downloads every week, and I haven't released a new episode for quite some time now.
Dang, that's amazing.
But people are seeking me out. Yeah. So that's been really interesting to see. Always get like, is it the Buzzsprout email every week? I'm like, oh, really? Where they come from? Which is really cool.
Right.
I think I'm not too fussed about audience growth. What I like to really monitor is profitability on the business the whole time. Yeah. And I check in on those numbers every week. My ad spend right now is very low. It's $4,000 a month versus the revenue that we're creating.
So you're doing $4,000 a month, but bringing in 78,000, or I guess pounds, is 4,000 pounds and then 78,000 pounds?
So for some bizarre reason, my ad spend is actually in dollars.
Okay. So $4,000 and 105 a month in revenue, correct?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. So I really enjoy those numbers more than anything. And I don't really focus necessarily on audience growth. What I find interesting is when we are running those ads, people come and find me on Instagram and come and follow me and want to figure out more about me. And then we just reach out to them and say, hey, welcome to my Instagram account, and get to know them. And then they end up booking a call with me, and then they sign up that way as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Again, I think there's benefits to both, and it just depends on what you like. I find that people have a hard time breaking into Evergreen. Like there's just a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of automation. I feel like there's a lot of systems kind of up and running.
I would disagree. Okay. So my entire business runs on Kartra at the moment, which is similar to Kajabi. And there's no extra system involved. I first went Evergreen March last year. I launched a group coaching program. I had 4 people sign up into it. And then I had this random idea at 11 o'clock at night to stick a recorded video into a funnel and run ads to it for £20 a day at the time.
Yeah.
And that resulted in me signing 1 new client every single week for 9 weeks in a row.
Wow.
I thought, oh, cool. That got me to a 15, 20K month really quickly.
Right.
So I didn't really do anything too complicated at the time. It was very basic. Then I went into a launch for a low ticket group coaching program, had a 36K launch, which wasn't bad. And thought, great, I've cracked this launch malarkey. I'm going to do this all again, rinse and repeat the same 40 freaking emails that got drafted. I'm going to rinse and repeat them again. The same challenge videos we used and all that kind of stuff. And I did it again 3 months later and had 11,000 in revenue from that. So a third of the results. Yeah, I doubled the ad spend.
Yeah.
And that made me think, crap, launches are so unpredictable, and I don't want my business to be this unpredictable. I don't want to rinse and repeat the exact same strategy and get a third of the results despite doubling the ad spend. And so I looked back at the end of last year, the end of 2020, I looked back and thought, well, what worked and what didn't work? And it was when I was evergreen and just gently growing that things felt very simple, very streamlined. Right. And I was working the hardest while launching, but then also getting very unpredictable results while launching. And that's when I thought, right, sod it, we're going evergreen full time this year. And the rest has been able to, allow me to grow a bit more. Yeah.
I mean, I love that. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions around evergreening. And again, it just comes down to the model you like most, because I look at launching and I'm like, it's not really like, once you have it figured out, it's not a lot of work. Like we're in the middle of a launch right now and I'm working 4 or 5 hours a day. It's been pretty relaxed. But in the beginning, they can be 100% unpredictable. But once you go through it and you know your numbers, you know it works, they do become very predictable. Much like an evergreen, it's like I put X amount of dollars in and we know it's going to turn into X amount over here. Let's test and tweak each time. So it is very similar. But again, it's just, what do you want? Do you want that consistency and something that you know is going to be working and just being able to focus on growing that? Or do you want the big revenue with continued payments at the end? Honestly, I just love both. Like, I love having a lower end product that we can evergreen. So we have our recurring payment plans in between the launches. So we have consistent revenue and then big spikes. But it is, you're like, when we go into a big launch, it's kind of like all hands on deck for the next like 1 to 2 months. And then we're just all in, and it pays off. But I think it also, maybe you can talk to this a little bit, it also depends on the model of the business. Because I would imagine some programs are structured in a way where it is, you need to start and stop at the same time. And I think launching is a good way, especially if you're doing renewals. If you're doing, and again, you might be able to debunk this, but if you're doing renewals, for us, having them all come in and renew at the same time and then repitch all at the same time makes it very easy. Do you guys have a renewal process in your Evergreen program? Like, how do you guys do renewals and things like that when people are coming in at different points?
So we have people that move from my low ticket to my high ticket, and I'll often pick out people that I'm like, you smashed it. I want to have a quick conversation with you about moving into the high ticket offer. And then people that get to the end of our accelerator program, I always have a conversation with them at the end anyway about, hey, what's your next step for you? Is it to do another year? Is it to do something else? So there's always an opportunity for that. But yeah, I like the flow, and it's interesting when we compare different marketing strategies. They're both great, as you said. There's good and bad to both.
Right.
I really enjoy being able to check in on my numbers every single week and be able to make a little tweak, little landing page tweak. Can we beat last week's data? And the impact of compound improvements over every single week over, let's say, 12 weeks is game changing compared to launching and then 3 months later testing the same strategy again and launching again.
Right.
And I just found that it wasn't fast enough to tweak stuff and improve things when I was just launching the whole time. But week on week improvements felt really good. Got it.
Okay, I have another question for you about evergreening, and then I have a couple more questions about the messaging inside of Evergreen. But the next thing is, when we launch, we've typically find people have to go through like 2 or 3 launches before they buy. With Evergreen, when people go through the funnel once, do you guys have a process to bring them back in again? And if so, like, how many times do people have to go through to typically buy, do you find?
Yeah, there's definitely a long tail. There's a long game to play here, which is really good. We have a really strong retargeting strategy that's made up of email, DMs, and Facebook video ads as well. Okay. So a lot of the high production, belief shifting videos that are created in the last couple of months is in my like long tail, omnipresent type retargeting thing at the moment. Okay. And I'm very patient as well. And I know I often have conversations with people where I say, hey, you're not actually the right fit for the accelerator right now, but let's stay connected and let's revisit in 3 months' time. So I'm more than willing to play that long game. And the more people are following my content and seeing what I'm doing, the more they get brought into the process. So they end up coming to join us eventually. Gotcha. I haven't gone and measured how long it takes somebody yet, though. I'm not sure how we do that.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. What I think I love about your Evergreen strategy is that it really incorporates what I think you called it something else, like personal something, but intimacy. And I think that's the biggest thing we get with launches is we get to be so present and really address people and talk to people and stuff, which for me I felt like it's always been missing from Evergreen, but I love that you guys incorporate that because that really is the magic. It's like this, there's an energy behind it that it's like this invisible element, and you've really mastered how to incorporate that into Evergreen, which is phenomenal. And so I really, really like that. I just have a couple more questions about the messaging, and you've talked about belief shifting videos and different things like that. Just overview look of how has the messaging transformed from beginning to end inside of your funnel since going through the program? Like, what have been the biggest shifts for you?
So I would say before joining the program, I didn't really know how to articulate what I do in a really strong way, and what I can really help people with. And I think there's a deeper layer to that, actually. Mm-hmm. I'd been creating results with high ticket on Evergreen for a year, but I hadn't really realized that. And in the beginning of the program, you give us an opportunity to step back for a moment and think, okay, what can I really truthfully embody from a position of the knowing rather than knowledge, as you like to say? Like, what have I actually lived had experience of versus what have I just read in a textbook.
Right.
And after a year of doing high ticket on Evergreen and also the launch roller coaster, I knew I could fully embody this message. And then moving to the next step, being able to clearly articulate that using the methods and frameworks that you give us,
Right.
it was just able to take the inner knowing of what I was meant to be doing out into the world and then lace it through all of my content, and the funnel and everything was just so simple after that.
Okay. Were you helping people with Evergreen before you entered the program, or is that something you discovered afterwards?
I wasn't saying that I was doing it.
Oh, interesting.
But I was doing it.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the thing with the program is that we kind of have you sit back and look back and reflect back and sit in the silence to see those things that are right in front of you that you're not seeing, which sounds like you were able to experience. And you know, we all know the results, which is amazing. To anyone who's on the fence about the Video 4X Effect program, what would you say to them?
Oh, just sod and do it. Absolutely. Yeah. Just jump in. And it's a program that will serve you for all of your entrepreneurial life. I feel like it makes you look at messaging in an entirely different way, and you need messaging to sell anything in the world. So whether you continue doing the business that you do right now for another 5 years, or you go and start another business, you're going to need this program one way or another.
Yeah, that's what people don't understand. I'm like, any business needs to have this figured out. Like if you're going to put yourself out there, whether it's organic or paid, you have to know what you're saying to pull people in. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I have some rapid fire questions I'm going to ask you to end this episode. But before we do that, where can people go to learn more about you, get information on working with you if they want to, all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to my website, roseradford.com, you won't find a sales page. So you're better off coming over to Instagram and saying hi. So I am Rose Radford, and drop me a message and say that you came from Brandon's podcast, because I'd love to get to say hi to you.
Awesome. And then how many Instagram followers do you have right now?
6,500.
I love it. Like the amount of people that have $1 million business that don't have massive followings is like, I just love, there's more than people realize. And so people focus on the wrong things, and you're the perfect example of on pace to have $1 million business with 6,000 Instagram followers. I mean, that's what basically where we were at as well. So absolutely love it. Are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
I think so.
Okay. Well, they're all pretty easy. So the first one is, do you believe that entrepreneurship should be taught in schools?
Oh, hell yes. Absolutely. If I ever have kids, I'll take them out of school and teach them entrepreneurship anyway.
Why? Why do you think it should be taught in schools?
I did a business degree and it was freaking useless for what I do now.
Yeah. I don't have a business degree, but I can see that. Okay. Do you make more decisions with your head or your heart?
I'd like to say with my heart, but it's probably more with my head.
Interesting. Do you see yourself more as the visionary or the integrator in your business, or maybe both?
I very much sit in both, but I probably am slightly more like 60% integrator, 40% visionary.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Usually if someone's like a full visionary, it's always heart. And if someone's more operations or integrator, it's usually head. So it's kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, I'm correlating. And oh, that's really fascinating.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You view yourself more integrator, and you make more decisions with your head. I mean, it's not always true, but that's just kind of the pattern that I've been recognizing after doing this podcast for a year. But interesting. Okay. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I would love to be tracking a couple of million by then. I'm sure we'll get there.
Okay.
And then I want to get back on the speaking stages. I did a TEDx a year or two ago, and I really miss being on stage. So doing more of that will be amazing again once the business is really humming along again.
What did you talk about in your TED Talk?
Why you don't make more money. It was all around some of the money mindset and relationship with money pieces.
Interesting. Do you incorporate any of that into your like messaging at all?
Not a huge amount.
Yeah.
Obviously, I talk about high ticket, so there's a bit of that involved, but it's not a huge focus.
You should explore that. Might be good for you.
Okay, I'll take the hint.
Yeah. Okay. The next and last question is, if there's one pivotal moment in your life or business that changed the trajectory of everything, what would it be?
It was handing in my notice at McKinsey, where I was previously 3.5 years ago as a strategy consultant.
Wow.
Walking out the door, bursting into tears, having no idea what I was going to do next. 3 months of living costs saved.
Oh my gosh.
No idea how I was going to make any money, and just figuring out that I had to go and be my own boss because there was no other way I was going to be happy, because one of my core personal values is freedom. And I also really care about making meaningful impact in the world, and I couldn't have either of those at McKinsey. So I had to leave the job I'd worked really hard to go and get.
They're a big company, aren't they? McKinsey?
Yeah, they're the world's top strategy consulting firm. I was meant to feel very grateful to be there until I left.
So what were you feeling like when you were there that caused you to leave?
Very burnt out, not using my strengths. And not making the kind of meaningful impact I wanted to make in the world.
Okay. And then how did you land on what you do now?
After many years of trial and error, because it's been 3.5 years now since I did that. So it's been a while, but I'm just one of those people that knew this is where I wanted to go, and just didn't care if it's going to take me 10 years to get here. Very dogged minded in that way.
But I mean, what like led you to this path? Was it just kind of like you had been in the business consulting field and you just wanted to teach some of that stuff? Like what was the decision behind it?
So I've been coaching female entrepreneurs on and off since I was 19 years old.
Okay.
I used to cycle across the city I was in university at and go and help 2 entrepreneurs the other side of the town. And so I was doing that for free. I didn't realize I was coaching. I just absolutely adored it.
Right.
And didn't realize that you could be paid money for helping other people in that way until I discovered the online space. And I was like, whoa, hang on, people are being paid for doing something that I think I would love to do.
Right.
And then I just dove into learning everything I possibly could about this world, and also taking my strategy consulting. Oh, we're back.
Yep, there we
go.
go.
Did I freeze there?
You did for a minute. It's okay.
Okay, we'll edit that bit out. So yeah, and then I took my strategy consulting background into this space as well. So yeah, it was really just a long time of very much enjoying coaching other female entrepreneurs too.
Gotcha. I love it. Well, Rose, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you so much for talking about your experience. And I'm so glad the Video 4X has been able to help you propel your business to where it is. And the thing I love about you is that you just followed the process. Like, I can't tell you how many people get in and then just don't follow the process, or they try to change it or they adjust it, and you just followed it and you trusted it. And I'm so grateful for that, and for you putting your trust into us and coming in and sharing your experience. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. If you guys are a first-time listener or someone who has not left a review, I would be so grateful for any reviews that you want to leave us on iTunes. And thank you so much for listening to this episode. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.